Hi, this is Mark Bernstein. Welcome back to If a Tree Falls in the Forest, Marketing, Branding, and Communicating Your Message. This is all about branding, Module 3, Part 1. So, when I was a kid, one of my favorite TV shows was a show called Branded, which starred Chuck Connors. For all of those of you who are old enough to remember, Chuck Connors played the rifleman and then starred in this show next. He played Captain Jason McCord, who was an officer in the Union Army convicted of cowardice during a battle, which was not true, by the way. But the opening every week with very dramatic music showed a colonel mercilessly stripping his insignia and buttons from his uniform as the chorus sang, "All but one man died there at Bitter Creek, and they say he ran away, branded, marked with a coward's shame. What do you do when you're branded and you know you're a man?" Well, Captain McCord was innocent and tried to prove his innocence for the rest of the show. But the reason I bring this up at the beginning of this module is when I hear the word brand, I think of that show and that opening. And it helps me to understand why some people don't like the word brand or the idea of it in our Unitarian Universalist congregations. It seems somehow commercialized for a religious organization to engage in branding. After all, we're not a cereal product or an over the counter medication to cure warts. It's kind of similar to what we talked about in the last module about people who equate marketing with evangelism. But as you will see, branding in our congregations is an essential component in a successful marketing plan, and it's not exactly what you may think. So, we're going to start this module with some ideas on what branding is and then how it relates to your church community. We'll take a brief look at mission statements since they are critically important in creating a brand. We'll talk about some of the elements of church branding, and I'll share some examples with you of branding from other UU congregations. In her article, Branding Your Church, Sherry Brown wrote, "Effective branding of your church requires that you present your church, its purpose, and mission to the congregation and the community accurately and with excellence. Internally, the brand answers the question, how do I feel when I'm at church? How am I treated? What am I leaving with?" Branding is more than a well designed logo and impressive website. The brand is the reputation a congregation has in its community. It's what the church does, who it is. The decision to brand a church is the decision to take control of the way a church is perceived. And effective branding captures a purpose and puts it in a format that others can understand. Branding actually goes much deeper than design and marketing, and it is a representation of the unique personality of your church. It should take into account your church's calling, strengths, and core values. In fact, says Alina Wheeler, your church's brand should be communicated at every touch point you have with your congregation and community. Tim Spivey says your brand includes your look and your logo, but it's also your vision, what it is that you do as a religious organization. Great brands provide compelling answers to three simple questions: who are you? What do you do? And why does it matter? When these answers are consistent, they strengthen our brand. When they are not, they erode the core of our brand. So you can see, folks, that branding is much more than a logo and a tagline. It really speaks to who your congregation is, what you do, and how others perceive you now and in the future. Mary Tomlinson at onpurpose.com says there are three essential parts of a brand, and I hope that these three parts will look familiar to you based on the last module that you viewed. Number one, how you perceive yourself. And that's the SWOT analysis: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. The second essential part of a brand is to determine who your customers are and what they say about you. So that's defining your target audience, the people attending your church, and the people who are not currently attending that you want to attract. And thirdly, it's understanding the competition. What makes people want to attend your church on Sunday morning over another congregation? These hopefully are three things that you've already started thinking about as a result of our conversation and presentation in Module 2. The definitive model for demonstrating the role of branding in creating strong, vital, and growing congregations comes from Natalie Kylander and Christopher Stone in their article, The Role of Brand in the Nonprofit Sector. This article is available for you on the HUULTI website. A decade ago, the dominant brand paradigm in the nonprofit sector focused on communications. Nonprofit executives believed that increased visibility, favorable positioning in relation to competitors, and recognition among target audiences would translate into success. Branding was a tool for managing the external perceptions of our organization. In contrast, the emerging paradigm, what we look at today, sees brand as having a broader and more strategic role in an organization's performance, as well as having an internal role in expressing an organization's purposes, methods, and values. At every step in an organization's strategy, and at each juncture in its theory of change, a strong brand is increasingly seen as critical in helping to build operational capacity, galvanize support, and maintain focus on the mission of the organization or the congregation. By now, it should be clear that we are defining brand very broadly. A brand is more than a visual identity. The name, logo, and graphic design used by an organization. A brand is a psychological construct held in the minds of all those aware of the branded product, person, organization, or movement. And brand management is the work of managing these psychological associations. In the nonprofit world, executives talk more about global identity and the what and why of their organizations. So Kylander and Stone look at both the internal elements of brands and the external elements of brands. Internally, the brand embodies the identity, the mission, the values, and the distinctive activities of the organization. Pip Emery, who co-led the most recent global identity project at Amnesty International, puts it this way: if you don't know where you're going and why you're relevant, you don't have a brand. If you don't know where you're going and why you are relevant, you don't have a brand. Externally, the brand reflects the image held in the minds of the organization's stakeholders, not just its donors and supporters, but those it seeks to influence, assist, or reach. So externally, a brand speaks to the image, identity, and reputation of the congregation in the community. A nonprofit brand is most powerful when the organization's internal identity and external image are aligned with each other and with its values and mission. Callender and Stone maintain that two critical factors in the success of an organization is strong cohesion and high levels of trust. Strong cohesion and high levels of trust. Applied to our congregations, a cohesive organization makes better use of its existing resources, building capacity, and high levels of trust, which attracts more leaders, more members, and greater generosity in terms of financial support. So, this is increasing impact. It also enables a congregation to make greater strides in achieving its mission. In the model that you see on the screen, which they call the role of brand cycle, branding is nested within organizational strategy, which in turn is nested within the mission and values of the organization. When branding creates a well aligned identity and image, it positions the congregation to build internal and external cohesion and trust. This in turn results in greater internal and external capacity and impact, which in turn enhances the identity and image of the brand with which the cycle began. And so branding creates internal and external strength in your congregation and continues to reinforce those strengths on an ongoing basis. This is the power of executive branding.